Hello again, everybody. Welcome back to another Q&A with Dr. J and her pelican. Today, we're going to be talking about leaky gut. Raise your hand. I'm telling you, this is one of those topics that's going to be pretty universal in its appeal because everywhere you turn, people are suffering from leaky gut and SIBO. And we read everywhere that the gut, it's like health central. Your gut is so important to health. And then there's all the medications that are over the counter and prescribed to get it under control, which in fact is probably the worst thing you can do is control the acid. So anyway, why don't you talk to us about what is leaky gut? Is it GERD? Is it SIBO? What is it?
Yeah, good question. And I think there's a lot of information out there about leaky gut, and I think a lot of it is somewhat inaccurate, to be honest.
Oh
And
dear.
the gut, the gap junctions. So you have cells in your intestinal lining that, abut each other essentially. And they keep food particles from entering from your digestive system into the bloodstream. And the gap junctions, if are damaged, they're open and food can get directly into the bloodstream, and that creates a problem. That's why we call it leaky gut, because those gap junctions are leaking food particles, and especially if food particles are not broken down properly, and like proteins are broken down into individual amino acids. If they're not broken down properly, if our digestive system isn't breaking foods down completely and they get into your bloodstream, your body thinks it's under attack. And so it mounts a defense reaction. And so it can create a mast cell reaction, which increases inflammation, creates joint pain and brain fog and all kinds of problems. Your body thinks it's under a major attack and just pulls out all stops to try to defend itself. I studied this a lot because I'm a functional medicine practitioner. When I was at the Institute for Functional Medicine, we talked a lot about leaky gut because it's the source of a lot of immune system problems and autoimmune conditions. It creates something called molecular mimicry, where the body thinks it's attacking that piece of food, but it looks a lot like let's say, our Schwann cells that are lining our nerve cells. And it can create MS, or it can create rheumatoid arthritis, or it can create Hashimoto's, depending on the organ that is being attacked because it thinks it's defending itself. The immune system is going to go after that and create an autoimmune condition. And so leaky gut's a big deal, and getting it fixed, supposedly, is a matter of identifying what foods you're reacting to, identifying if something is causing the leaky gut, whether it's parasites or bacteria or digestive issues, like you're not breaking down your food correctly. There are lots of supplements, and there's a huge protocol that goes into healing leaky gut. And so that's what I did for many years. I spent a lot of time on it and worked with a lot of people. Here's the thing. After a while, that same person came back with it again and again, and I thought I had fixed it. And it's what is going on? Why does this keep happening to this person? And I knew we were missing something. I knew there was a piece of the puzzle missing. And so when I started looking at the genetics, and one of my first patients was a little boy who had Lyme disease, and he was in a wheelchair. He was about 10 years old, and he was in so much pain. They didn't know it was Lyme disease. Basically, they told him he had chronic regional pain syndrome, or CRAPS, which I'm sure it felt like crap. But they didn't know how to work with it. And he'd been to 40 doctors. I'm not kidding, 40 before he got to me.
Wow.
And I started to test him. And using my old system, I found Lyme and leaky gut. And he was allergic to almost every food except like rice and broccoli were the only two things he could eat without reacting. That's not much fun for a 10-year-old, you know. And he was a bright kid. He was in the gifted class, but he couldn't go to school because he was in so much pain and really struggling. His parents had been everywhere. And when I discovered the Lyme disease, I said, did he ever have a bullseye rash on his legs or anything like that? And they said, yeah, he did. And I said, was he ever tested for Lyme? And they said, no.
Hmm.
After all those 40 doctors, and they said, and we just moved here from right outside Lyme, Connecticut. And I was like,
It's
this
right
is,
there in the name of the town.
yeah, seems like a no-brainer. So we had him tested, and sure enough, he had Lyme, but also the leaky gut. And so I started him on my functional health protocol. It didn't really do much. It was helping a little bit. They were grateful to have the diagnosis and to know what we were working on. But then right around that time was when I just discovered the genetic piece. And I didn't know this was going to happen. We found that he had the MTHFR gene, he had the VDR, he had several of these genetic variants, and we put him on a protocol. And he came in 30 days later, and pain's gone. He's out of his wheelchair,
Wow.
and and I tested him on all the foods, and he was okay. All the foods suddenly had cleared up. The leaky gut was
Wow.
gone. And I didn't know what it was. I was like, oh my gosh, the leaky gut is gone. What happened here? And I did not address leaky gut at that point. I was doing only the genetic piece and putting together this program based on his genetics. And like I'm testing him and all the foods he's okay on. And I was just like, I don't know what just happened, but I'm stunned. I didn't have to go after the SIBO, the small intestine bowel overgrowth. I didn't have to go after the leaky gut. The body did it. And
Hmm.
that was like a bah. Oh my, we got to the core of what was causing the leaky gut, what was causing the SIBO. We turned on his immune system. So when you do that, we turn on the immune system and the body gets rid of that small intestine bowel overgrowth. It gets rid of parasites, viruses by itself. You give the
Mhm.
body what it needs to do what it's supposed to do, and it does it. And it did. It repaired the gut. The body has
Mhm.
the ability to do that. We
Yeah.
just have to get rid of everything that's causing the problem. And I was blown away. I was like, how did that happen? And I want to show you, if I may,
Yeah.
on a biochemical pathway chart here. Let me share my screen. Okay. Up here, I don't know if you see this, zonulin and gluten in the top, and that's where we find leaky gut. Is zonulin is the hormone that opens up the gap junctions. And so there are lots of things that can cause zonulin to go up, and then those gap junctions open up, and we have what we call leaky gut. And it's often associated with how much histamine you have in the body. Histamine is here, and it's broken down by an enzyme called HNMT, the histamine N methyltransferase. The thing that breaks it down is SAMe, and SAMe is made through methylation. And so over here, you can see SAMe is, and here's that MTHFR gene that so many people talk about, and these two pathways are like knobs. You're turning them on to create methyl groups. And the SAMe takes those methyl groups and it goes and gives it to different pathways. And so one of the main pathways up here is the histamine breakdown. And so when people have high levels of histamine, it's going to open up those gap junctions, increase zonulin, and create leaky gut.
Huh.
So there's a huge connection there to leaky gut. So when we give the body what it needs to methylate correctly and create SAMe, then it breaks down histamine and the leaky gut goes away, which is very cool. And then over here, when we get the vitamin D receptor going, it gets rid of SIBO, small intestine bowel overgrowth. And good literature on this. You can Google this, vitamin D receptor and small intestinal bowel overgrowth, or vitamin D receptor and leaky gut. There's a huge connection there too, because when we upregulate the T cells, we get rid of infections, and then the body can heal itself and it starts to repair its own gut and gap junctions go away.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I didn't know that was what was happening, and I
Right.
didn't expect that because we weren't really going after it directly. And that's when I started to look at that interaction of the genes and how we can turn them on and get them working correctly and get rid of these chronic conditions. The autoimmune conditions started to clear up. The Hashimoto's would go away, rheumatoid arthritis. I have several cases where they no longer have rheumatoid arthritis. They can't find that RA factor in their blood. They aren't having any joint pain, and they're essentially in remission or cured, essentially. So that was is stunning to me to see what all happened when we did this correctly.
I can't even, there's no better testimonial than the story you just told, really.
Yeah. This little kid, this is 15 years later. He's 25 and he just graduated from college in
Oh.
robotics. Smart kid. Yeah, he's awesome. And he still comes to see me. He flies from Phoenix out to Florida to see me once in a while just to make sure he's on track because he knows if he gets off track, he can go downhill. Great kid. He's really a sweet guy.
That's a great story. And that's a good point you just made that we're not changing people's genes. And so being on track, once you get it right, that means for life. And there might need to be tweaks because the body changes over time. And so the processes within the body may not respond the same way to the supplements you got 2 years ago. Things may start to feel a little wonky. You're going to want to have a practitioner in your corner who knows this stuff that can say, okay, yeah, come in, let's take a look. Let's do the questionnaire again and see where you are.
Yeah, good point. And it's funny because this kid would come in and he'd say, you know what, I think my COMT is off because I'm feeling a little anxious. He got it. He understood,
Yeah.
you know, that poster and they go, that's me. I that going on. So they start to learn why they are the way they are and how to spot it when they're off track.
Yeah, and that's power, right? That is giving people truly power to work with their health, their future. As you said, preventive, I guess that was the last video, but prevention is 9/10 of the process here. We don't want you to go downhill into a disease process. If we can get you tested and see where the weaknesses potentially are, then you can be aware of them and look out for them. And
100%. Yeah.
peeps, that's another episode of Q&A with Dr. J. Please share these, by the way, if you love them. I was talking to a friend on the phone the other day, and she said, I'm not a good podcast listener. They're too long, but these Q&As are just bite-sized, and they're so much fun. Leave us a question or a comment here on the YouTube page, and we'll be back again with another episode very soon. Bye, Dr. J.
Bye, GC. Thank you.